Now, international media has started raising questions on India's 2-month silence on the ongoing Manipur violence. Last week, the European Parliament, in fact, had adopted a resolution calling on Indian authorities to take action and stop this violence in Manipur. India blames the lack of information and the internet bans for its quote-unquote silence, but the questions that arise even after the video surfacing is, what is it that we are doing now? What measures will be taken to bring lasting peace to Manipur? And what will be, and will the faith in the agencies be restored amongst the people? In fact, we are going to put out those international media screenshots of the kind of reportage they have done on this Manipur violence and how this has brought about, this has actually brought about shame to the country. This has brought about our goodwill to be reduced in the international arena, and we have no choice. We can't give any excuses at this point of time for the shame and humiliation that we at this point of time are facing from the international media or the international groups of foreign countries who are raising issues on this Manipur violence that has gone on for months together. Now, Ambassador Pradeep Kapoor on the telecast with me. Ambassador, a shameful, disgusting, inhuman incident that has taken place. But this is a tip of the iceberg in Manipur. These instances, as the Chief Minister was saying, maybe several in number, dozens in number, but have not been acted upon by the police for whatever reasons, for its lack of for its incompetency, for being completely outnumbered by these communities, by these individuals, by these mobs who at this point of time carry arms and ammunition. But the big question of the kind of perception this is creating for India in the international arena, whether it is America or in Europe or in Australia or any part of the world. Does this also impact you who lives in America with the kind of narrative that ends up being built against India?
Yes, thank you, Megha, for raising this very important issue and discussing it here in NewsX. It is absolutely important to thrash these issues thoroughly. It is a very unfortunate phase of the Northeast that it is going through this violence. Northeast was on a fast track to development. What has happened is indeed very, very unfortunate and very, very shameful. It should not be happening at all. And the way it has been blown up in the international media, as if the international media is just waiting to pounce on anything which happens negative in India, notwithstanding the fact that, there are far worse things happening in the other countries of the world, even in the Islamic countries. But notwithstanding all that, what I want to say is that the 2024 elections is coming down. Northeast was in a very good shape in terms of, very peacefully moving ahead. Now, the people who want to dislodge the current government will, leave no holds barred to making sure that they create one disruption after another. So the amount of funding which is being put in for this purpose is also very well known. I would like to name some of those, entities so that we can, see how the funding is coming, what it is doing, and how to tackle it and how to challenge it. So one of the important supporters for unrest is, of course, the George Soros Foundation, which has earmarked a huge amount of money to get Modi out of power, and they have stated it blatantly. The other is, of course, our northern neighbor China, which is desperate to create as much disruption as possible.
Yeah, but at this time, can we really, we are given fodder to them. Can we really blame them for raking up this issue? Because something similar, there was rioting that was taking place in France just a few days ago, and we had been attacking France left, right and center, pulling them up for not being able to resolve these communal racist matters that had come to a boil. So in a situation like Manipur that has continued for 4 months and it is only escalating, do we really have do we really have any sort of reasons or any sort of evidences to prove otherwise that we are competent at figuring out resolutions, figuring out these situations and finding solutions for it?
Yes, the Indian society is one of the most resilient societies in the world, and I have no doubt that we will be able to, come to a point of resolution. And because the amount of discussion that we have on these issues is phenomenal. Now, I am in USA, I'm in Washington, D.C. The amount of gun violence which I see here, the amount of other sorts of woke violence which I see here, and the amount of rapes which I see here, which happen all the time, and there is very little discussion on those issues. They are in many X times the factor of India. But we, being a very sensitive society, a very sort of traditional society, and a civilizational country, we do not let these things pass. We sort of dig in our heels, and we, like in the other case, which had happened earlier, also Nirbhaya case. You saw the amount of media coverage within India, the repetitive focus on how we need a resolution and a solution, and then laws were changed. So that I don't see happening in the Western world or in other countries. And I'm
Okay.
very happy that it happens in India.
Okay.
And it will happen in India. We will take stock. We will understand how it has happened. It is not something which has arisen out of the blue. It has been triggered. The violence has been triggered. The burnings have been triggered. The attacks have been triggered. The number of conversions which have taken place in the Northeast is mind-boggling. Suddenly, the Indian people are waking up to this fact that the Northeast is boiling pot because of the conversions, because of the proximity to China,
Yeah.
because of the George Soros factor. So all these factors are very important for any country. Now, when you have
Okay.
made a powder, a tinder keg, which is burning, then suddenly for things to slip out of hand and these sort of heinous acts to happen becomes possible because you have laid the ground for it already. But it is not that it is a natural corollary that it will happen. We have to see how it will not happen in the future, how Northeast will be back on the track to development once again,
Okay.
and their peace will be restored. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Gautam, again, the question, there has been European Union who has passed a resolution intervening in this matter, asking India to resolve this issue urgently. There was a while ago, there was, the American ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, who also made statements saying that the US is happy to help India in resolving the Manipur crisis. There have been statements after statements of the Ministry of External Affairs who have said that this is an internal matter of India and we are more than capable to handle the situation. It doesn't look like we are able to handle the situation in wake of this crisis that continues to boil without any sort of resolution or without any sort of solutions that are coming forth. Now, in fact, so much so that there is a demand for an army rule, there is a demand for presidential rule, there have been demands of the Chief Minister of Manipur to be stepping down from his position. It's been 4 months, and in all these developments that have taken place, obviously India is being put in a bad light, and like I said, I wouldn't blame these international media or people in the international arena talking about India, and I don't see in a report or two in the international media if India was, you could start comparing India to a Taliban or something, which is a stretch of the imagination. But this could happen. But so how do we stop this matter? How do we find a solution once and for all to allow for violence to be ended for now and to talks to happen?
Well, I think there has not been enough emphasis on the drug trade that the cookies have been indulging in, heroin imports and distribution via Myanmar and financed by China to a certain extent. And this is something that the government of Manipur cracked down upon. As soon as they did, it resulted in sectarian violence between the Kukis, who are Christians, and the Meitei, largely Hindu. Now, this has been going on, as you rightly said, for several months, but the real point is that the drug dealers are not going to give up without a fight. They also are well funded. They have a lot of armaments, which are also being provided by China via Myanmar with a view to stoke trouble. You had a similar situation in Nagaland as well. So you are going to get this kind of thing happening. And if you ask me why the EU and the American ambassador decided to speak on this, it is because they're trying to frame this as a pogrom against Christian minorities, which it is not. Now, if you ask me why this has been allowed to go on for 4 months, it's because the army is under instructions not to overreact, and the fight is continuing. There are 60,000 refugees who fled. The Kuki are mainly in the forest areas where they're not entitled to be, in the mountains. And they've been told to move out of the forest areas because those are reserve forests. Again, they don't like it. They like the forest because it enables them to get up to their nefarious activities more easily. In the villages, they're more exposed and they're likely to be caught. So they don't particularly like all of that. So all of this has come about, in various people have said AFSA was removed. In fact, at the instance of the Manipur government, and perhaps it was removed too soon. And now it's a matter of perhaps reimposing harsher controls. To bring this to a close with harsher controls is, I think, quite doable. But the point is that the real reason for this unrest? Or is there a business that has been attacked and which, you will agree with me, must be put out of business, because you cannot have heroin coming in through Myanmar and being distributed all over by this community, and then
the question then being raised, Gautam Mukherjee, would be that while we have focused on our borders along Jammu and Kashmir and along Ladakh, why have we not been capable enough to strengthen our borders on Manipur along Myanmar when this situation has been rampant for many years now?
Well, part of it, Megha, is that we are courting Myanmar for better relationship with them, because we want to put this road through under the Act East policy going from India through Myanmar into Thailand. And so we do not want to act harshly against the Myanmar government. The second part of it is that ethnically you've got Kukis on both sides of the fence. And so it is very difficult to determine which is which, who are the natives of Manipur and who have come across the border in terms of this drug trade. So, we could close down the border. In the past, we have chased tribals into Myanmar and, had an army operation against them. But we don't want to do it too frequently, because the bigger issues are at hand. It's the same thing in Punjab. The drug trade from Punjab is also designed to weaken the country. It's coming in from Pakistan, but it must be understood that it is very lucrative, and therefore both sides are corrupted by this and are cooperating to keep it going. They don't like it being stopped.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But in this fight that is taking place and the business of violence and mayhem that at this point of time is visible in Myanmar, in Manipur, that the perception game is truly being lost by India on the international map.
That's correct, Megha. I think perception-wise, what the European Union and the Western media are essentially painting this out to be is India's inability to control violence against the minorities. In this case, the Christian population in the Northeast. But what the media on both sides, and I'm going to be frank about this. It's going to be both the Indian media and the Western media have failed to take cognizance of is the fact that this is not an issue that erupted on May 3rd itself. If we are going to look at it just from the prism of May 3rd, it's a very, very myopic way to look at this issue. This issue is, it's a long drawn issue right from 1972 when Manipur received their statehood. This is a long standing issue. It's a demand by the Metis community for greater representation. At this point, they are comprising about 50% of the population of Manipur, but they have access to land area of only 9%. It's a long-standing demand that they be granted a scheduled tribe status so that they can be better represented. At this point, they're completely marginalized, not only economically but socially, and they need more securities for themselves. So, in essence, Gautam Da essentially painted the external picture of why this conflict is essentially happening. He alluded to the poppy trade, which is essentially something which the Kuki tribes are essentially involved in. The drug trade from both sides of the fence, both in Myanmar and this side of the border in India. But one of the contentious items in this particular issue is the SSO, which is the Suspension of Operations Act, which is an agreement signed between the 24 Kuki terrorists and the Ministry of Home Affairs. In my opinion, that is something which is of extreme contention because it limits the ability of the state to act against those 24 terrorist groups, typically the Kuki terrorist groups, and that is what is essentially limiting the ability of the government.
That's part of the internal problem that is marring Manipur at this point of time. But again, the larger issue about what are the vested interests of foreign media, of international bodies, and Ajay, if you could shed more light into this, and whatever maybe the agendas that the international community or certain countries might have against India. I earlier also mentioned that we've given fodder to them at this time. So how do we quell this violence? Shouldn't there be action by the government, by the central government, to ensure that this situation is brought to control instead of playing a wait and watch game?
I don't think any wait and watch game is underway. At the outset, I would definitely like to condemn the incident which took place in Manipur. It's horrendous, inhuman, treacherous, to whatever adjective you need to add to it to be done. But equally, at the same time, I would like to condemn the Western media, which has been giving it a religious color. The fight in Manipur between the Kukis and the Metis is mainly the socio-economic. A religious color is being given to it by the Western media, realizing well that religion runs high in Indian politics, and India in 2024 is going to face its Lok Sabha elections. I'm not naming any party for that matter, not naming any organization, but there are organizations which have been insinuating, they have been targeting, they have been propagating such issues, and to their help, and they had been, to an extent, been taking advantage, and to which I think even the Western media, West has all through of late been decrying us, decrying India, realizing that the way we are expanding in our economy, in our developmental aspects.
Fair enough. But then again, like I'm saying, that we have brought it upon ourselves. This could have been averted. Tomorrow, we were just a few weeks ago, we were talking about the violence in France, and we lambasted the French government for not being able to control the situation, and it had gone on for weeks together. So with what face do we tell the foreign media to shut up? because we are right, because at this point in time we have been failing at controlling the situation?
No. See, first thing, who triggered it? What's the social reasons or the elements behind triggering such an incident? That needs to be, if the Western media has to write on it, they should write on that instead of giving it a religious color that cookies are, of one religion and the Meiteis are of the other religion, so they are fighting against each other. Why give it a different color altogether? I'm against it. And that's the reason why I am condemning at all levels, the Western coverage of the Manipur incident.
Okay.
Those behind it need to be and must be taken to task. This is again I'm saying.
Okay, all right. Quickly then, Ambassador Kapoor. Yeah.
Sorry, Megha, I just wanted to quickly add, something that the Western media has failed to pick up is how does the Kuki tribe or, people from that part of the region, both sides, Myanmar and India, get access to US-made assault rifles and, very, very sophisticated weapons. That's something which they haven't picked up. So obviously they are being funded. That funding source needs to be identified. That needs to be called out.
Okay.
And US-made weapons are not that easily available.
Something will have to be, because I have not come across. There may be rumors, there may be reports, but at this point of time have not been verified. But nonetheless, like I said, there are conspiracy theories going on. There are these reports that are coming in, and they will have to be delved upon. But again, an ethnic issue, it is an issue with regards to insurgency that is taking place, and it becomes difficult for the government to figure out a situation, but a situation that has been simmering for the last 4 months, like I mentioned. But quickly, Ambassador Kapoor, now in such a situation, how do we go about rectifying things in the matter internally? This is obviously, we have to play in the back foot in terms of how the perception of the global media has been towards us and towards Manipur. How do we resolve the conflict?
Megha, I would like to take a slightly longer term perspective, because as I mentioned earlier, and as some of my distinguished colleagues mentioned earlier, the focus is currently the 2024 elections. Now, India is a land of 1 million mutinees. We have tremendous mix of, ethnicities, religions, caste, color, creed, faiths. Now, we have been able to take along the entire nation as one for a very long time, very, very successfully. And particularly the progress which has been made in development in the last 10 years has been absolutely phenomenal. Now, that is not to the liking of a lot of other countries, and they want to sort of disrupt that process. Now, my suggestion is the following, that we have to sort out Manipur with a very firm hand and bring peace immediately, but also we have to up our game very, very significantly in terms of our intelligence on the ground, in terms of our intelligence in the air, in terms of our capacity to control all these sources of funding. Because once we dry up these sources of funding and the support, whether it is coming from whichever source, we have sufficient intelligence now. FCRA has been able to accomplish a lot, but we are very successful in that.
Okay.
Now we have to take it a step further and see how to control this issue also.
Okay, all right. I'm out of time, but I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.